the senator from Delaware.
Mr. President, are we in a quorum call?
We are not.
In that case, I ask to be recognized and pleased to be here with you today. I rise today in strong support of critical bipartisan legislation that will come to the Senate floor not later this year or later this week or this month, but later today. It's called the Fire Grants and Safety Act. Importantly, this legislation includes not one, but two critical pieces of bipartisan legislation that I've been working on with Senator Shelley Capito and a bipartisan coalition of our colleagues literally for years. The first part is called the Accelerating Deployment of Versatile Advanced Nuclear for Clean Energy Act. That's a mouthful, but it's also known as the ADVANCE Act, and we couple that with legislation involving support for our firefighters across the United States of America. Last month, the House of Representatives passed these two bills, not as one, but as a package, by an overwhelming bipartisan vote of, get this, 393 to 13. Now, we don't pass a lot of bills by margins like that over in the House or the Senate, but today we have an opportunity in the Senate to do something very much the same. Before this evening's vote, though, I want to take a few minutes to highlight the significance of both the Fire Grants and the Safety Act, as well as the so-called ADVANCE Act. In my role as co-chair of the Congressional Fire Services Caucus, along with Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, I've shared here on the Senate floor many times over the years that every day, our nation's firefighters bravely run toward danger in order to save lives across America. In my home state of Delaware, there are more than 6,000 firefighters, 6,000, and a great majority of them are volunteers. The same is true in many states across America. And yet, despite their extraordinary dedication to protecting our communities, their jobs are not getting any easier. In fact, they are getting harder. And the risks that they continue to face grow each year. Annually, I'm told that there are over 36 million emergency calls that fire services respond to. 36 million. That's a 20% increase in the last 12 years. This is in no small part due to climate change and the resulting increases in extreme weather events across our country, which are translating directly into hotter, bigger, and more dangerous fires. Just this week, our country is experiencing record-breaking temperatures from New England to California, where heat risks have been categorized by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration as extreme. It's clear that the kinds of emergencies that our firefighters must respond to are changing, and the demands on fire departments across this country are changing as well. For example, last year when a devastating tornado touched down in southern Delaware in Sussex County, it was our firefighters who showed up to lead people to safety. We've seen similar acts of service across our nation, especially on the West Coast, where firefighters have long helped families escape the hazards of wildfires. I believe we have a moral obligation, which I believe is shared responsibility, to provide the resources that firefighters need to continue to protect the rest of us, our families, and our businesses. And today we have an opportunity to do just that. The Fire Grants and Safety Act reauthorizes not one, but two critical grant programs that fire departments across our nation rely on to safeguard our communities. The first is called Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response Grant Program, and it provides funding to local fire departments to hire much-needed personnel to respond round the clock to emergency situations. The second is the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, which helps provide fire departments and emergency medical service organizations with the vital training and equipment, like fire trucks and protective gear, that they need. Fire departments across Delaware have contacted my office to share how these grant programs are a lifeline for their work that they do every day. And I'm sure our colleagues have heard similar stories of the essential roles that these programs play in fire departments across America. For example, fire departments in Colorado have reported a lack of critical funding and supply, which could be aided by the Assistance for Firefighters Grant Program. And firefighters in Vermont, where presiding officers from, firefighters from West Virginia that co-sponsor this legislation, where I was born, have reported being overwhelmed and understaffed in light of recent emergencies in their community. It is clear as day that reauthorizing these grant programs is imperative. The Fire Grants and Safety Act will also enable the United States Fire Administration to continue to provide leadership, coordination, and training for first responders and emergency medical personnel. As the lead federal agency for fire data collection, public fire education, fire research, and fire service training, the United States Fire Administration ensures that the fire service is prepared to respond to any and all hazards. Firefighters put their lives on the line for us every single day. I'm proud to work with Senator Gary Peters as well as with my Congressional Fire Service co-chairs, Senator Collins and Senator Murkowski, on this legislation to equip our firefighters with the tools and training they need to do their jobs and do them safely. There is an African proverb, but many of my colleagues have heard it because I said it enough, but there's an African proverb that goes something like this: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I think that's true. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Today, on the Senate floor with this legislation, we are going far, and as it turns out, we are going together. Both Democrats and Republicans from all across the country, and in concert with the administration, with the president who supports this legislation. And we're doing it by considering not one, but two bipartisan priorities at the same time. That second priority before us today is legislation known as the ADVANCE Act. This is legislation that Senator Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia, my native state, and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and I have worked on tirelessly for years in both a bipartisan and a bicameral manner. The ADVANCE Act accelerates the deployment of our nation's largest source of clean power, and that is nuclear energy. Nuclear energy powers millions of homes and businesses across this country every day with zero emissions. It is an indispensable tool in our ongoing efforts to address the climate crisis and strengthen our nation's energy security. My own personal interest in the potential for nuclear energy goes all the way back to my days as a Navy ROTC midshipman, and later as a naval flight officer tracking nuclear submarines throughout the oceans of the world. I witnessed how initially our submarines and later our aircraft carriers could travel millions of miles safely on nuclear power. Largely because of the success of the Navy nuclear propulsion program, the United States had the technology and the workforce at the ready to build a commercial nuclear energy industry that could provide safe, reliable, and clean energy to American homes and businesses. Today, nuclear energy provides about 20% of America's electricity, 20%, but nearly half of America's clean energy. Let me repeat that. Nuclear energy provides about 20% of America's electricity, but nearly half of America's clean energy. There's no question that this carbon-free source of energy can and will help us meet, it is helping us meet our climate goals. That's why I have long believed that nuclear energy needs to be part of our work to address climate change while also creating thousands of jobs, tens of thousands of jobs, in fact, across this nation of ours. The ADVANCE Act empowers the Nuclear Regulatory Commission with the tools and with the workforce that it needs to keep our current reactors safe and to review new nuclear technologies efficiently. These resources will enable the Commission to provide the certainty needed to deploy more clean energy and to make sure that our commitment to safety remains paramount at this crucial moment in the history of our planet. The ADVANCE Act also directs the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to support 21st century applications of nuclear energy. For example, the ADVANCE Act requires the Commission to explore how to repurpose retired fossil fuel-fired power plants, as well as existing infrastructure to support new, clean nuclear energy production. Additionally, this legislation fundamentally, and I think firmly, maintains the core of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's mission, and that is to ensure the safety of America's nuclear power. Unless the Nuclear Regulatory Commission diligently ensures the safety of our nuclear fleet of reactors every day, as well as new nuclear technologies, the U.S. will not be able to realize the potential of this carbon carbon-free energy source. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission must maintain this commitment to safety while considering all shareholders, all stakeholder views and concerns equally in order to maintain the public trust and confidence. Ultimately, this bill addresses the most pressing needs of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and will lay the foundation for the safe and successful deployment of the next generation of advanced reactors. As a result, we'll strengthen Americans' leadership on nuclear energy and provide climate leadership on the world stage. Let me be clear. The ADVANCE Act will strengthen our energy and our national security and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, as well as creating thousands of new jobs while growing our economy. I'm not sure what our colleagues would call that in their states, but in Delaware, something like that, we call that a win-win-win situation. We need more of those. In closing, the legislation we vote on today will provide fundamental support for our nation's firefighters while bringing our nation one step closer to a clean energy future. Once again, I want to share my heartfelt gratitude to our colleagues and our staff members who have worked with us, Democrat and Republican, House and Senate, in some cases not just for days or weeks or months, but literally for years, in order to bring these provisions across the finish line. So many of our colleagues have had a hand in this effort, but in particular, I want to thank Senator Gary Peters, who chairs the Committee on Homeland Security, with Senator Susan Collins, Senator Lisa Murkowski, who've been great leaders in Fire Services Caucus over the years, Senator Shelley Moore Capito, who literally is the lead author on the ADVANCE Act, and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who's very much involved in crafting that legislation as well. We could not have done this and be where we are today without each of you. Before I close, let me also mention, this is not something that I get to do every day, but I want to also thank the Speaker of the House, Congressman Johnson, for ensuring this bill's passage through his chamber with resounding bipartisan support. I think it was about 390 to 13. That's an amazing, amazing outcome in legislation of this magnitude. But, and I want to thank our own Majority Leader here, Senator Schumer, for working with us and his staff to bring this legislation up for a vote today. Some people might be watching this across the country and think, what is this all about? And why would we take legislation dealing with firefighters and the tools, the resources that firefighters need? Why would we couple that with legislation involving nuclear energy? What's the connection? And the connection is this. Last year was the hottest year on record on this planet, as far as hottest year ever. This week is maybe the hottest week we will have had in this country and maybe on this planet, the hottest week. And what's causing that? Well, we know what it's causing. It's too much carbon dioxide in the air, and we need to reduce it. And one of the great sources of carbon dioxide in the air is the cars, trucks, and vans that we drive. That's probably about 35% of the carbon emissions come from our mobile sources. Maybe another 30% come from our power plants that provide electricity for us. Maybe another 25% come from our manufacturing plants. That's where it's coming from. And we're doing a whole lot of things. House and Senate, Democrats, Republicans working together in many cases, working with the current president, current administration, in order to try to turn around the fact that our planet is on fire and getting hotter. We have passed all kinds of legislation. It's being enacted now, a methane emission reduction program, legislation involving the release of hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs, legislation as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, including literally across the country, the places people can charge and recharge their batteries, corridors across the country to recharge electric vehicles. That's part of what we're doing. Clean hydrogen which can be used to provide, literally to fly airplanes and to move cars, trucks, and vans, and to provide us the electricity that we need. We're doing a lot on windmills, especially windmills, not just on land, but windmills on either side of our country. And a lot is going on with respect to solar, and we can be proud of all that. Having said that, I'm probably mixing metaphors here, but we're paddling against the tide. This is a tough battle. And while we've launched a lot of smart programs and smart initiatives and doing it in a bipartisan way, and we've done it with, in many cases, not just environmental groups, but business groups as well. But we still have a big fight ahead of us. And we need to implement fully the Methane Emission Reduction Pact, the Kigali Treaty, bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, clean hydrogen, hydrogen hubs, all the stuff that people hear about we need to not just talk about it, we need to implement it. That's what I'm going to be spending the next 6 months that I serve here, or privileged to serve here in the United States Senate to do, to make sure that the promise of all the legislation, all the groundwork that we've laid will actually bear fruit. And these young pages that are sitting here along with the presiding officer who come here from all over the country, they're 16, 17, 18 years old, to make sure that they're going to have a planet to grow up on. We want to make sure they have a planet to grow old on. And it's up to us to make sure that that happens. It's a shared responsibility like most things. It's not just a Democratic responsibility. It's not just a Republican responsibility. It's not just on the president or the legislative branch. It's not just businesses and all. It's really all of us. We all have a dog in this fight. A lot of us have children and grandchildren, and hopefully they will benefit throughout their lives from the work that we're doing here, including the work that we're doing here today. I'm very proud of my colleagues for getting us to this point in time, and I'm especially anxious to have this vote later today. And I hope the kind of margin that they were able to stand up in the House, I think it was 390 to 13. I hope we can do at least as well, and maybe even a little bit better. And I'm grateful to the President for his strong support of what we're bringing up today. And he's already telegraphed that he's prepared, when he receives this legislation, to sign it into law. Joe Biden used to say it's when he was a mere mortal, when he was a senator from Delaware, he used to talk about volunteer fire companies. We got a bunch of them. And most of the firefighters in Delaware are members of volunteer fire companies. And I think that's probably true across the country, but then Senator Joe Biden used to say that volunteer fire community in Delaware was really sort of like, they're so potent, they're kind of like a third party, sort of like a third party. And they punch above their weight in many ways. And they punch above their weight in many ways to make our state safer. I think that's the case across America. We want to make sure that they have the tools, the resources that they do to do their jobs even better, and to make sure they're able to do it safely at the end of the day, so they can go home to their families, have a full and a long life. With that, Mr. President, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. And I want to thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer, as somebody who's been very supportive of this initiative. And we look forward to, under your leadership today, to get a strong vote. And I'll look forward to coming back in an hour or so and being part of that vote. With that, I yield the floor. And I note the absence of a quorum.